What's happening, truth seekers? Trumpeter Bobby Spellman here to welcome you to our second episode in our two-part series on the physics of the trumpet. In our first episode, we discussed the mechanics of how the trumpet itself makes sound, and in this episode, we're going to talk about the way that our bodies work in order to allow us to coax beautiful music out of this brass plumbing. Now, in the process of researching for this episode, I was surprised to find how much mystery and controversy still surrounds these subjects in the scientific community. So I'm going to do my very best to summarize the topics at hand, get into what is known, what is unknown, and give my own take on what I've learned in the process as a trumpet player. And in the process, I know that we're going to have a lot of fun with the physics of the trumpet on this episode of Trumpet with Bob. All right, before we get started, I just want to say a big thanks to all of the subscribers to the channel. If you like what we're doing here, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. We also have a new Patreon page, and if you'd like to become a supporter of the Patreon, we're going to put all kinds of follow-up videos and additional material, behind-the-scenes stuff, and some transcriptions and other fun stuff on there. So you can follow the link in the description, and you can find us on Patreon and help support us making some videos like this one. All right, moving along, on to the physics of the trumpet. As you are probably aware, the trumpet is a wind instrument, also known as an aerophone. And as such, the sound production on the trumpet begins with our air. So I think it'd be a good place to start, if we're talking about the physiology of playing the trumpet, to begin with our lungs and the way that our air works. Now, I covered this in another video entitled, What I Got Wrong About Using Your Diaphragm While Playing Trumpet. But we're going to do a little recap because I think it's important to the whole nature of the physics of the way the trumpet works. So, when you're breathing is a two-part process. You have inhalation, also called inspiration, and exhalation, also called expiration. Now, inhalation is an active process in which your muscles work actively to get air into your lungs. So, when we breathe in, our diaphragm compresses and flattens, opening up our thoracic cavity. Now, in opening up the thoracic cavity, that creates an imbalance in the pressure between our lungs and the outside air, which causes air to rush into our lungs. Now, you can check out that active process by just breathing in and paying attention to the way that your muscles operate while you're getting air into your lungs. Give it a try. All right, in contrast to inhalation, exhalation, as we're just walking around doing regular human being stuff on the street, tends to be a passive process. That is to say that rather than your muscles working to push the air out of your lungs, what is typically happening when we exhale is that the elasticity in our lungs is causing that pressure imbalance to work the opposite way, where there's extra pressure in our lungs, and that's going to just allow the air to flow out of our mouths, much like the air escaping from this balloon. Now, you can also try that for yourself. Once again, you can breathe in and just feel your muscles relax as you exhale the air back into the atmosphere. Now, as trumpet players, we can make exhalation an active process rather than a passive process by engaging our abdominal muscles and our external obliques to add extra force and to push that air out of our lungs into the atmosphere. Having control of this active exhalation process is a big part of being able to play the trumpet. Now, once the air is expelled from our lungs, it makes its way up through the trachea, through the vocal tract, into the oral cavity, and out through the lips, causing the buzz that we use to make a sound on the trumpet. Controlling this expulsion of the air from our lungs gives us a lot of control over the dynamics of the trumpet. So as I continue to add pressure with my abdominal muscles, that will increase the force at which I'm pushing the air out of my lungs, which will in turn increase the amplitude of the sound wave, giving me more volume on the trumpet. So I'm going to start off very quietly and gradually increase the pressure, increasing the volume of the trumpet. All right, now that we've got a handle on the way that we use our air to power this machine, we can get into the way that our body works when changing pitch on the trumpet. Now, in our last episode, we talked about the air column inside the trumpet, the standing wave that we create, the fundamental frequency of the instrument, and the harmonic series that is based on that fundamental frequency. In this episode, we're going to talk about the way our body works in order to access these various harmonics on the trumpet. So, our job as trumpet players is to alter the frequency of our lips in such a way that we are able to excite these various harmonics on the trumpet and access those different partials all the way up the range of the trumpet. So if I just run through those various partials so that you can hear them, it's going to sound like this. It's clear that we have to change the frequency of our lips in order to be able to access these various harmonics across the range of the trumpet. However, the way that we change the frequency of our lips is where things start to get really interesting and a little bit mysterious. In fact, in his book Teaching Brass, Kristian Steenstrup sums up this mystery pretty well, saying, "It has still not been definitely established how the lips of brass players operate, what constitutes the correct description of their movements, or how they are influenced by the acoustic feedback from the air column of the instrument. And acousticians and physicists still consider the phenomenon a classic problem." So there's clearly some controversy remaining in the scientific community over what specifically is happening when we cause our lips to vibrate at different frequencies, but we will try to cover all of the aspects of this phenomenon as accurately as possible. And in order to do so, I will start with the factors that are most well understood, and I will gradually make my way into factors in playing the trumpet that remain a little mysterious and controversial. So let's dive in. All right, let's start off with what we know. In any vibrating mechanism, there are typically several factors that work simultaneously in order to affect the frequency and therefore the pitch. Take this baritone guitar, for instance. There are three factors that affect the pitch of each string on this guitar. The first is the tension on the string as controlled by the tuning pegs. The higher the tension, the higher the pitch. The second factor is the diameter of the string. So typically, guitars are made with a larger diameter in the lower strings and a smaller diameter in the higher strings, because the larger the diameter, the lower the note, all other things being equal. Now, the third factor is the length of the string. So the guitar is built to make it very easy to very quickly change the length of the string in order for a guitarist to be able to play all 12 notes of the chromatic scale over the whole range of the instrument. So all you got to do to change the length of the string is push down on the fret, and all of a sudden, as the string gets shorter, the pitch goes up. All three of these factors are important in determining the pitch of the string. So, guitar manufacturers and guitar builders of various kinds will create the instrument in such a way that it uses all three of these factors at the same time. You can also see these factors in string frequency if you look in a grand piano. You can tell very easily that the lower notes are of a much larger diameter than the higher notes. But in the case of a piano, you can't change the length of the string quickly. So the lengths remain the same, and you just get the whole range of the piano laid out in various lengths and diameters and tensions. All right, so what are the factors that influence the frequency of our lips? Well, once again, there is still some debate surrounding this subject, so we're going to start with the least controversial factors and work our way towards the more mysterious and controversial factors in changing the frequency of our lips and thus the pitch on the instrument. The first factor that influences the frequency of our lips is the tension or stiffness of our lips, usually controlled by our orbicularis oris muscles, and particularly the muscles in the corners of our lips. Anytime you go to make an embouchure, you can feel yourself engaging these muscles in order to give your lips enough tension to be able to play the notes that you need to. Generally speaking, the more tension you have on your lips, the higher the notes are going to be. Now, we're also able to add tension to our lips by adding additional pressure to our lips from the mouthpiece, although it is usually common practice to try to avoid any excess pressure because it can cause fatigue and other problems. But that would sound a little something like this. The second factor that influences the frequency of our lips is the size of the aperture, which is the space between our lips through which the air moves. Generally speaking, the smaller the aperture, the higher the note, and the wider the aperture, the lower the note. The third factor influencing the pitch of our lips is the area of our lips that is vibrating. Generally speaking, if there is more real estate on your lips vibrating, you're going to get a lower note, and if there is a smaller space on your lips vibrating, you are going to get a higher note. That is why a trumpet mouthpiece looks like this, and a trombone mouthpiece looks like this. The larger diameter of the cup of the trombone mouthpiece allows for more of the lips to vibrate, which enables trombonists to play lower notes, whereas the smaller cup on a trumpet mouthpiece allows only a certain amount of our lips to vibrate, which is going to give us higher notes. All right, the fourth factor that we use to alter the frequency of our lips is the air pressure that is a result of both our natural process of exhalation as well as our control of more forceful exhalation using the abdominal muscles and external obliques to push that air more forcefully out of our lungs and into the trumpet. Finally, that brings us to our fifth and most controversial factor, and that is the position of your tongue inside of your mouth. Now, many trumpet teachers will discuss the idea of using various vowels to change the pitch of the instrument. For example, an E vowel will bring your tongue up in your head, decreasing the space through which the air can move, increasing the pitch, whereas an Ah vowel will bring the tongue down and create a little bit more space in the mouth, enabling lower notes. Now, a little bit more on that later. Now, just like with the guitar string, all or at least most of these factors are going to be working simultaneously to create a certain frequency in our lips that's going to allow us to access these various harmonics on the trumpet. Now, it seems to me that no one factor is going to operate on its own to create the pitch, but rather there's a combination of factors that are at play that enable us to create the pitch as we want it, as we hear it in our heads. Now, as one example, I can play the same pitch with several different aperture sizes. So, for example, I can play a middle C with the aperture that I would typically use in playing the trumpet. Now, I can open my aperture quite a bit and still play the same note. Or I can close my aperture a lot and play the same note again. Now, obviously, the timbre changes. My tone is changing quite substantially. But if it were the case that the aperture was the only factor influencing the pitch of the instrument, you'd have to assume that changing the aperture size in such a dramatic way would necessarily cause me to play different pitches. But by compensating with the other factors involved, I can still play a middle C, whether I'm using a huge aperture with a lot of air or a very small aperture sort of compressing that sound. As another brief example, I can play the trumpet using a trombone mouthpiece, but it just makes it a lot harder to play the notes that I want to play in the higher register. Now, I can play those notes, but having such a large surface area of my lips vibrating into this trombone mouthpiece means that I have to compensate with these other factors in a way that would make playing with a trombone mouthpiece on a trumpet extremely impractical. The emphasis that is put on each of these factors of playing provides the foundation for often very different methodologies in trumpet pedagogy. So for one easy example that's pretty universal, we generally speaking will try not to add excess pressure from the mouthpiece onto our lips, even though that will create additional tension, which will enable us to play higher notes. The reason that most people don't recommend putting excess pressure on your face is that by bludgeoning your lips with a metal mouthpiece, you can quickly lose stamina and you can cut off the vibration in your lips. Now, some pressure is obviously necessary, and different methodologies will emphasize the amount of pressure that you need to use differently. But the principle remains that even though that is a factor, we generally speaking will try not to use excess pressure of the mouthpiece on our lips, even though it creates that extra tension. Now, another good example of competing methodologies would be Claude Gordon's method versus Jerome Callett's method. Now, for example, Claude Gordon in his books really emphasizes entirely the use of air support and the use of the tongue in creating different pitches. On the other hand, Jerome Callett's Super Chops book discusses basically using the aperture and lip tension, but coming from the top and bottom rather than from the corners of the lips in order to reach those higher notes. In both cases, both musicians specify in their books that their methodology is the only one that will work. So you can see these varying different methodologies, and they're all based on just the emphasis put on different factors involved in changing the frequency of the lips and thus the pitch on the instrument. From a physics perspective, our first three factors, that is the tension of our lips, the size of the aperture, and the area of our lips vibrating, make a lot of sense and are fairly well understood. But what about the use of air pressure? There's no doubt that the air from the lungs provides us with the aerodynamic force required in order to make our lips vibrate the way we need them to. Furthermore, it's easy to tell by adding additional pressure that we can control the dynamics of the trumpet. However, does air pressure influence pitch? Well, in order to test this, I built a little artificial set of lips with some balloons in order to eliminate all the extraneous factors in playing that we might do subconsciously. So here I have some fake lips that I made attached to a tube, and I will only be able to control the air pressure through these fake lips. And that's going to sound a little something like this. So you can hear, as I blow harder into the tube, as I increase that air pressure, the pitch of the lips, the frequency of the lips certainly does increase. Now, it doesn't increase in a dramatic way, but you can hear the way that the lips are vibrating. Generally speaking, you can assume that when we're playing the trumpet, we're unconsciously controlling all of these elements simultaneously. So there may be some other components involved as we, for example, raise up into the upper register and increase air pressure. We're also manipulating a number of other things to get those notes. But there's no doubt that to some degree, that air pressure does influence the pitch of our lips by changing the frequency. Beyond this fun little experiment, I think it's important to mention, even though it's a fairly anecdotal point, that just about every great lead trumpet player and high note specialist that I talk to about this kind of stuff will emphasize the importance and prioritize the importance of airflow and using the air pressure, air compression, things of that nature. Now, there's all kinds of things that will be happening simultaneously and probably unconsciously while a trumpet player is playing from the low register up into the upper register, but there's no doubt that having a good control over that airflow and the air pressure coming from your lungs is an essential aspect to being able to play the trumpet regardless of the context. Think I can play the trumpet with these lips? Oh, I sure can. Alright, gang, well, as I edit this video, I've come to realize that I'm not going to be able to fit all this information into just 2 episodes. So, this will be the conclusion of episode 2 of 2, which is now 2 of 3. And you'll have to wait until next week to catch the final episode, otherwise you're going to be dealing with a really long episode here. So we're going to have a lot of fun in the next episode getting into the mysterious nature of what the tongue does, or if the tongue does anything to control the pitch. So we will be able to cover all of that in the next episode, and that'll make everything a little bit more comfortable. So for now, that will be the end of this episode. I hope you had a wonderful time going on a little journey with me through the physics of sound. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and find us on Patreon at the link in the description. I'll also be putting all of the books and studies in the description below, and you can check them out at your free discretion. Or you can just wait until next week's episode, and we will discuss the remainder of the factors, which is really only one factor left, and that is the position of the tongue. Get ready, gang. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, friends, thanks so much for checking out this video. We hope it helps in your quest for the majesty of musical self-expression. If you like what we're doing here, you can give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. And if you'd like to support the creation of new videos like this, you can become a subscriber on our Patreon page at patreon.com/Ridgewood School of Music. There, subscribers will have access to more in-depth follow-up videos, as well as solo transcriptions, various musical exercises, and all kinds of fun stuff. If you'd like to follow me on my musical adventures, you can find me on Instagram at Bob Spellman. And you can follow the Ridgewood School of Music's other social media pages by following the links in the description below. The Ridgewood School of Music is currently accepting new students online or in person in the New York City area. If you're interested in lessons, you can find us at www.ridgewoodschoolofmusic.com, or you can send us an email at ridgewoodschoolofmusic@gmail.com, and we can set you up with a great teacher for the instrument and the style of music that you're interested in studying. All right, gang, well, have a wonderful time practicing, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.